Um, First off, if I look rude on my phone, it's because I need to post the link, the YouTube link, on the same one, the different one that you just sent. Okay, so if I look rude, it's because I have to post the link. It's okay. I'm gonna introduce our panelists here today, and then I'm gonna be looking at my phone. Um, we have Henry Danner, Amanda Addison, Sam Easy, Jarrett Robertson, and Lucy Baptiste will be here shortly. And I thought we would just talk, just give a brief intro to each about ourselves. I'll give you a brief intro of myself. Thank you for coming today to the Bronx River Art Center. I am the curator of Capture the Movement. Capture the Movement is an exhibit of 60 Black photographers. This is here in this space, it's 34. This was first seen last October in Brooklyn at the Bed-Stuy Restoration Plaza. So this is the third time I've been able to show the exhibit. I'm very excited about that. I'm gonna give you a little description about myself. How would I describe myself? I'm a documentary filmmaker. I'm a visual artist. I'm a union member. I work in the film and TV production. I've been doing props for 25 years. I am an activist, and I felt it was important to bring a collective of Black photographers in this movement. And no one made me do it. It's something I felt that I needed to do to bring face to people behind cameras and let you know that there are Black photographers out there. So thank you. That's a little bit about myself, and I'm going to be on my phone posting for that.
So I have the honor of following up the curator, which is always great. Yes. Thank God. Okay. So yes, my name is Henry Danner. I'm one of the 60 Black photographers featured in Capture the Movement. I first just want to thank Shawn for including me in the exhibition. It's the very first exhibition that any of the photos that I took out at the protest last summer was in. So I was in the first exhibition at Bed-Stuy. And now I'm in this one here in the Bronx, which is where I'm from originally. I live in Bed-Stuy now. So it just feels great to be here in this area that I spent a lot of my formative years of my life running around and getting into trouble. But about me, I am actually a full-time social worker. And I picked up photography as a way, just, as another way for me to communicate things that I see and things that I'm interested in. But it has really morphed into what I would like to describe as more than a hobby and more of a passion, because I just enjoy telling stories, and I enjoy telling stories on behalf of communities of color and my other minority groups, because that's where I'm from. And I feel like a lot of our stories have been sort of told by people that are not from our communities. So, one of the main reasons that I got out to the protest was really just to kind of give an honest perspective from somebody that's been affected by these issues that everyone was out protesting against. So, I am excited, about the talk, excited to be here on this panel with these other great photographers as well. And I'm looking forward to sharing more. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Amanda Addison. I was also featured in Shawn's first exhibit called Capture the Movement in Brooklyn. I'm a marketing professional and photographer from Michigan, and some of my work is featured in Ruvan's slideshow over here. So I've been into camera since I was a kid. I grew up without many photos. I moved a lot as a kid, so we often lost our belongings when we would move, or just things get lost. And so I don't have very many pictures of me as a kid. So I took interest in always documenting everything and taking a ton of photos. My nieces and nephews get sick of me because I always take photos of them doing every single thing. So I'm the one in the family with the camera in your face at every event. But I started to take it more seriously about 4 years ago. I traveled a lot and I always wanted to document the world around me as well instead of just using my cell phone. So I started training with a few professional photographers and, picked up a camera and just would house my work, on my computer, basically, never sharing it with anyone. And last year, I've been an activist for years. And after a month into simply protesting, I thought, I think it's important for me to pick up my camera and detail what's going on out here. And so that's what prompted me to go out into the streets and not only protest, but also capture what was going on. So.
Hello, my name is Samuel Joseph. This is my first exhibit that my photos are featured in. They're in the slideshow right there. So about me, I'm a photographer myself. I'm in college right now, actually. I go to the Borough of Manhattan Community College, BMCC, in Chambers Street in North Manhattan, like 2 blocks from the World Trade Center. I'm going to be in my second year. So when I first picked up a camera, like before photography, I used to struggle with being shy. I was being less social, stuff like that. So after I picked up a camera, I became more social, more outgoing, more creative. It's been the year when I was in year in photography. I feel like this is the career I want to do. This is the thing that I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So fast forward to last year, when the protests were happening, I also was kind of hesitant to go out because of fear of getting beaten by police, riots, and stuff like that. But as I joined the movement and I take pictures from the movement, I feel like a part of the family. I feel more safe. I just feel relaxed because I met a lot of great people in this movement. And yeah, that's it.
Hi, my name is Jarrett Robertson, and I would also like to thank Sean for putting together this collective. It kind of gives photographers a base to show the work that they've been putting, their heart and soul in for the last year. So thank you for that. I think the first time that I even knew protests were going on in the city, I was kind of unaware of it, and I was taking a bike ride down the street and I was arrested. So it kind of threw me into the pit. And ever since then, I was kind of anti-cop for the people since day one. I started off as a documentary filmmaker and music producer. So I was trying to figure out kind of how I could lend, I guess, my vision to what was happening in the streets. And instead of filming, I chose this round to just capture photos. So it would be kind of a little bit of a lighter work in the end. Because if anyone, does filmmaking, how many images and the editing and the post-production that we have when it's done. So I kind of tried to figure out how to tell a story through a singular image.
I see Caroline there behind us. Are they able to speak and just kind of introduce themselves?
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hi. Sorry I can't be there in person. wall and all the activists. I've been studying documentation of the pandemic right in March, and in May when the protest started, I started following the protest. My first protest was May 30th, and I right away saw that there was a lot of leadership by Black women, and I've been documenting them on the street, and I wanted to really show their strength, their beauty, learn about them in a different way. So when the protest had recedes in intensity in September, they were more available to meet me. So I interviewed them, did videotaping, and I asked them to pose for me in this green wall setting, where I afterwards put them all together. I really wanted to show their strengths, beauty, and remember all their energies that come on the streets, and leading the movement and changing the narrative in a lot of things for New York and beyond.
Is Ruvan there? Or not? We'll, it's okay. Is Ruvan there? Or do you want us to?
Sorry.
No, it's still Carolyn. I just want to know, is Ruvan there? Oh, there's Ruvan. Hey, Ruvan, do you want to speak now?
Hey, everyone. You guys hear me?
Yeah, but you're not featured. It's okay.
Can you guys hear me? Or?
Yeah, I hear you.
Can you guys hear me? Oh, it's weird. Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I think I'm in a weird delay. I'm watching you guys on YouTube. Hey, I can't quite see what's going on there.
Does he hear us? Ruvan's the curator of the timeline photography.
Yeah, so I put the slideshow together. I guess my story is I can't. It's weird to be doing this because I can't see what's going on elsewhere. But yeah, so we're doing the slideshow because I had been out taking photos for a magazine on the first day, and the magazine group decided not to publish the pictures because they're too intense, and they were telling a story that that their audience hadn't been prepped for. I think it wasn't just their magazine. It wasn't. Most of the pictures, I realized that there wasn't a story that was being documented by the media that explained what was going on from the perspective of people on the ground. So after a while, I decided that there are so many different photographers that were out there, professionals, amateurs, people who have done photography before, and I started noticing how there were so many different actions that were happening on a daily basis that the only way to understand what was actually going on in New York was by aggregating all the data from all these different photographers. So I started an archive, and then I edited things down to what you guys are seeing today at Bronx Art Center. I think what else. One of the interesting things is that all the different photographers had their own focus. So some were focused on more LGBTQ plus movements within the BLM movement. Others were more focused on immigration coalitions within the BLM movement. And there's a lot of crossover. So when looking at each of the photographers' body of work about the protests, everyone really has their own story. And at times you'll see these stories kind of bouncing back and forth against each other through these really active days.
Is that it? Here we are with technology. Cool. I don't want to step over you, Ruvan. I guess, are you finished right now? I guess so. Maybe so.
Just to give you a heads up on what the technology thing is, we realize that there's one
delay.
One more cord that we don't have, so keep switching from whoever's talking on the monitor to you guys talking, just doing it by hand. So it'll work. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So should we pause a second? Oh, okay. So I'll just delve into a couple questions. Let's just get right into it. Tell me, what's it like to cover a movement that is about Black lives, and you all standing here are Black photographers? So I was curious if you could talk more about the movement, since it pertains to our lives, and your role out there on the streets. I forgot to announce, Sean Waltrous was supposed to be one of the panelists today, and he hurt his back, so he is resting. Just wanted to mention that today. And Henry stepped in. So you can jump along. You can, whoever wants to jump in, it's not, you know.
So the question is, what was it like to cover the movement? I would say for me, only way I could describe it is that it was an emotional roller coaster. Some days I felt very sad and angry, and then there were days where I felt very, hopeful and optimistic, just seeing the amount of people that came out, the diversity amongst the crowd, the protesters, and feeling like there was things had to change after this. I felt like that combined with the pandemic, I was like, there's no way that life can go back to the way it was before. So on those days I felt hopeful, but then there are days I saw cops slamming people to the ground, being really aggressive. And I just felt like, they don't get it. So it was days where I felt like nothing was changing. So it was really just an emotional roller coaster. I felt happy to be a part of history in that way, in the way that many people before me had been involved in civil rights movement and other movements of importance. I felt very proud, to represent myself and my family and my community in the ways that I did. So yeah, it was a lot, and I still think that to this day, I'm still trying to make sense and grapple with all of the emotions and thoughts that ran through my mind and my body during the times when I was out there documenting. But yeah, the best way to sum it up for me is that it was just really up and down, up and down, up and down, like a roller coaster.
And also, the lens as a Black photographer, is there anything unique covering a movement about us through our lens that you want to discuss or bring to the table? And Lucy Baptiste has just stepped in. Hi, everyone.
So I think for me, it's definitely been an emotional roller coaster. Sometimes it's heavy. Sometimes you feel overwhelmed with joy. I would say in the beginning, in June of last year, when I would see an outpouring of people, on the Brooklyn Bridge, it definitely made you feel happy to see so many people stepping up. And then there are times on, for example, the night that the Attorney General in Kentucky decided not to indict anyone for Breonna Taylor's murder, that was heavy to go out and protest. I'm wiping my eyes, wiping tears from my eyes as I'm trying to shoot, because I'm thinking someone thinks drywall is more important than my life. So it's definitely been an emotional roller coaster, but I still find it to be an honor to go out and shoot, to have the life in my body, to be able to tell the story. So, and I think what's unique about being a person of color shooting, the this movement is that I'm telling our story. I'm just one of many helping to tell a story. So I think because if we look back, during the civil rights movement, there were definitely Black photographers, but their work wasn't shared. And a lot of what we learned from those times was learned through whiteness. So I think it's great that we're out there to see, and to see other people that look like me out there shooting. It's really important.
Well, for me, covering the movement in the past year, I witnessed a lot of emotion in people's faces. I witnessed pain. I witnessed anger. I witnessed sadness. I seen some people cry. But at the same time, also, I witnessed happiness, joy, fun, get together, and all of that. And it's really, like they said before, it's an emotional roller coaster. Like, it hits you. It hits you, like, every time. And to see all of that, it makes me feel like, holy crap, it's very intense. It's very like, I'm trying to figure out a word, but you get what I'm saying. It's really it's a story that it never ends. A story that never ends. It's a story that always continues till probably the end of times. Also, we're in a pandemic too as well. So people are still struggling, as I see in the movement, as because of the pandemic, stuff like that. So I mean, it's a lot. That's all I gotta say about it.
Yeah, and one thing I've also kind of felt is that, I guess similar to the Million Man March, when there's a large group of people together, we kind of all form an unheard bond. It's like kind of unity where we all share the same fight and the same compassion for fighting for something that we all believe in. So it's kind of like an unseen family that you don't really, that you don't really need to explain. But since we're all together and we all have the same end goal in mind, we're just kind of on the same page with each other. So it was more like forming an unseen and unheard of family that you don't even need to like talk to about, but it's kind of more mental than anything else. So it's like probably just the most beneficial collective of people forming from a movement, because I guess after all of this, we are all kind of understand that we are like helping each other out.
Oh, you can introduce yourself first, Lucy, and then just what would you like to share about being a Black photographer in a movement that is about Black lives? Is there anything unique that you feel your lens brings to others because of who you are?
So my name is Lucy Baptiste. That's a heavy question. It's not one that I can answer with one word or one sentence. Again, I'm capturing what's going on for the past year and a half, trying to leave a legacy. That's trying to make sure that history is written right. It's told correctly from my perspective. And I think that's all that I got in regards to that. It's a heavy question.
This is kind of threefold, and also I think we're also used to each other, but for me, 2020 was the most liberating time in my life because a lot of us are out there, table's down, it's okay. A lot of us are out there every day, rain, sleet, hail, snow, and I worked in an industry that was shut down. So I had no work, and June 4th was my first day I was out there. And I wanted to ask you, Amanda, I should talk about this. Here was a protest in the middle of a pandemic when a man was murdered and lynched on television. And I just couldn't watch that. But I just couldn't, 5-10 years from now, I just could not in myself say I wasn't there. So I came out on the streets marching, protesting. And then I said, Shawn, you're a documentary filmmaker. Why are you not get your camera and stop playing? So I felt for me, we were so fortunate to have that. And I'm not even saying opportunity, but every day we woke up, follow Justice for George, and there were 20, 30, 40 actions, and we were there. And looking back, I'm so thankful I was there and we documented it. And I think the next question is about how social media plays a role in this movement. And for those of you who may not know, one of the hubs for the movement on information on what is going on is Justice for George. And that is where you found out about where the actions were. And I had to up my game on social media because I really wasn't huge. I was posting on Instagram, but Instagram is the hub on how we communicate. So the photography really has grown from that. So I wanted to speak upon, if you want to interject on how social media has played a role, but that is precisely why, for me, I put out a call through Justice for George looking for Black photographers who've covered the movement, because I felt the phone was not big enough to show these images. And I wanted to have them physical, and I wanted to create a space where we could gather and you could be empowering the movement visually. But this just wasn't big enough for me. But it helped push, obviously, the message on the movement, but also imagery. But we can kind of delve if you want, but I just wanted to throw that out.
Yeah, I just want to co-sign that. I feel like Instagram in particular was big. Prior to the movement, I had been looking through the internet to see like if there was websites or blogs or anything that posted when protests were happening and things like that, because I wanted to start getting out and documenting more of those things. And I wasn't really finding anything. And Shawn mentioned Justice for George, which is an Instagram account that sprung up, and they just every day started sharing daily where different actions were happening. So I think it was a lifesaver in a lot of different ways. And I think the main way for me is just that it was a way for me to map out my day. Like I could see when and where things were happening and figure out, okay, I'm going to go here first. I'm going to go there. I could look on Instagram stories and see exactly where the protests were happening and see where they moved to. So it was just a way to stay connected and get information, at the snap of a finger. So I think it really helped propel things. It helped get everyone on the same page. And I know back in the day, like, civil rights era, they had people that would go to the phones and like call the newspapers and tell them like where they were protesting. And I'm just like imagining how did they do that when we have like this technology and we just benefited from it in such a major way. So I always just kind of like play with that in my mind. Like, wow, we're very fortunate to have social media and technology on our side.
I would agree with Shawn and Henry. I totally appreciate the Justice for George page. I appreciate photographers that reposted things. I definitely would have missed it if we were still calling into newspapers. Because, Justice for George became the site that I would go to, the page that I would go to know how and where to show up to. So if it wasn't for them, and also organizers for posting on their own pages, I wouldn't have, been able to stay organized or spread awareness myself. So social media played a huge part in helping us spread awareness.
Yeah, and I agree with them right there. I believe social media is very pivotal to why this movement is still ongoing. Like pages like Justice for George really put out day to day coverage of protests, marches, and rallies here in New York City and beyond New York City. So I was able to find out about the marches here in New York City like every day, like when they start, where they at. So when I first introduced to Justice for George Floyd, I was struggling to like find like marches or rallies to go to because like I don't really have access to organizers, websites, stuff like that. But after Justice for George Floyd, NYC, when I found out about it, it's I go to marches like every day. There's like days I go like 2-3 marches a day. So yeah, so grind was real. So I believe Justice for George Floyd played a pivotal part of it. Organizers who spoke, who put out a post, who spoke about the actions and protests and movements that happened in New York City, and yeah.
Yes, I think social media was a huge help for everybody. I think in the beginning, I was finding out about the protests through an app called Citizen, and you would have to have first somebody call the police about a protest, and then they would put it on Citizen, so it'd always be a little bit late. But I guess it's just one of those technological advances we have to think, like before we could make phone calls, before, any of that. Like now we're in a position where instantly we could share things with the world and we'll know exactly where something is. So that was a huge plus that I'm happy we could take advantage of.
Do you want to comment? Do you want to take it? A couple things came to head. Sorry, one more time. Let me think. Is there something in particular that you want to show in your photography? Is there a message, or is there something in your work that you want to show to others that's very unique to you? Or what do you want to convey in your documenting this movement? At least let me at least say something.
Sorry about that. So for me, my main objective and my main goal in documenting is capturing those untold stories, those people who are on the ground, who might be overseen by someone who might be more popular or more known in that community. So that's really my main goal, is to have the little ones not forget that, we can uplift their stories as well. So that's the type of photography I do.
So early on in the movement, my main goal was to put out my vision of the BLM movement, because the mainstream media early on in the movement always try to paint the movement in a bad way, with all the rioting, all the looting, all of the graffiti, and all the violence that goes on the movement, even though like over 90% of BLM protests are peaceful. So I want the world to see the movement through my eyes. So right now, I think I've accomplished that, but I think there are more goals for me to accomplish in this movement. So also I transition to like capturing emotions, like portraits of people in this movement, as well as like number of people in this movement, like, and also mutual aid, giving out food, sneakers, clothes, and all that. So I feel like I accomplished that, but I feel like there's more to me accomplished in this movement.
And I should mention Sam is 19. He's going to be 20 next week.
I think something that what I've always tried to capture is humanizing who's out there protesting. Last year, before any of the protests erupted, what you would always see is black and white photos of black people dead in the street, or some video. And what I wanted to do through documenting protests was to share, one, that we're not violent, And if we are, it's because we're defending ourselves. And also to humanize us, show the emotion in our faces, whether it's joy, whether it's pain, to really show that. I stay away from conflict. So I don't care to put the cops on my page. We already give enough attention to them just in general. So they don't have a space for me. No diss to anyone that chooses to do that, but I just choose not to give space to them. And so it is truly focusing on the activists that's out there, the people that are on the ground. And that's what's important for me to showcase.
Yeah, I also look for the untold stories that not everyone has access to. And I think I was really just trying to find just the true like feeling behind people's faces and, you know, what is behind the words they're saying. I also found that the closer you get to a subject, like the more you can feel from them, which is, you know, you would think that the farther away you see more in the perspective of things, but I kind of found the closer you get, the more intimate you feel of their true emotions.
And you know, for me, I'm big on community, and I like all of my photos to show some form of community, people coming together to accomplish something. And I mean, with protest photography, is not very hard to find that, but I still think that there's something to be said about being from the communities that are forming, you know, being a part of or being a member of those communities or being adjacent to them. And I felt like giving my perspective on, you know, how important community is was really just like what I want anybody to look at my photos and be able to take away. You know, we're much stronger together than we are separated. And that was evident. I just witnessed so many acts of people looking out for one another, keeping each other safe, giving someone a shoulder to cry on, a hug, laughing together. And those are all like the emotions that I think of when I think of, you know, community and how we hold each other up and how we support each other. So I would like to think all of my photos, or the majority of my photos, reflected that.
Anything else? I want to talk about is, do you all feel like you have a duty or responsibility? I myself, I mean, 2020 for me was, like I was said before, very liberating, but I found myself in this kind of visual journalist role that I'm a documentary filmmaker by trade, but I felt like every day I had to post. I had to show you where I was. I had to tell you what is going on. If you weren't able, or you think you saw what was going on based on the news, I was like, no, I'm going to show you really what was going on. But I felt very obligated, like almost work. Like I felt like I was on assignment. I don't know how to say that, but in France or in California that really, really took my work to heart. The people that followed me and really appreciated saying thank you so much from San Francisco, letting me know that you all are still on the streets, it encouraged me more to keep posting. And so I was like, I'm in Minneapolis, I have to like get this out. And I felt like I challenged myself on an assignment. I went to Minneapolis because, and we can speak about trips, some of you have been to DC and Minneapolis, but I went because I had to see for myself that corner 38th in Chicago. I wanted to be in touch with the community in Minneapolis. I had to be there, and I wanted to share with everyone else that I was there and what I experienced, but it took on a whole other role of obligation that I had never thought I would feel, but it was imperative that I told everyone what I was doing and what I saw, who I met, how I felt, because and it's almost, you're special in being able to do that. And this time is still special, but I want to just speak upon, does anyone else feel that way about an obligation or taking yourself really seriously on being on assignment for yourself and showing what's out there and how it affects you? It's a long question, but that's how I think.
I think at times I felt obligated to do so, to tell the story, depending on what was happening. So I know that I also traveled to Minneapolis. I felt the need to, even when I went to the March on Washington, it was to post in real time to show, look at all these people out here that pulled up to support last year in August for the March on Washington. And then with Minneapolis, I went out there last fall, and then I used to live there for 4 years. So it was more like, it was a second home for me. It's where up until last week, my younger brother lived. At some point, all of my siblings and my mom and I all lived there. And the obligation came from just like a personal connection to it. So in 2008, my older brother was assaulted by cops there. He had a gun pulled out on him for a traffic stop. And that left him with a lot of anxiety. So me going there was more like, I saw the police brutality years before it happened. I would see police brutalize, white guys at clubs who were drunk. So what they were doing to men of color or people of color. So the obligation came from more of a personal aspect. But when I went there, it was, I want you to see what's actually happening and unfolding right now. So when I went for the start of the trial, it was to show every single thing that was happening, and especially for the verdict. I mean, just because that almost felt like, okay, we're reaching the end of the stretch about this story, right? But there's even more stories now with Daunte Wright. But I wanted, and I even had to brace myself, because for the verdict, I was like, what if this doesn't, the whole time I'm on the plane, I'm like, what if they acquit him? What if, what am I going to show? More than likely anger, but I felt obligated, but more so from a personal reason of feeling obligation. Because, while I do tell a story, I never want to feel like I want to force a post out, even if someone is watching. So I want to tell the story and tell it right, no matter if I post it a day later. But yeah, for the verdict, it was really important for me to post that in real time, because everyone was on the edge of their seat waiting to see if justice would be served. Now, whether or not we think 22 years is justice, that's another story, but.
Come out in 8.
Right. Yep. But, Lucy was there also, so I don't know if you want to.
Oh, yeah. So I've made like 6 trips back and forth to Minneapolis. So it's become home to me. I would never thought Midwest, I would like Midwest actually. But that community is amazing. For me, as far as the obligation, for sure, I am obligated to document this, whether here in New York, whether in DC, whether in Philly, whether in Minneapolis, and those are some of the places that I've gone. It is important, again, because we have to tell that story from our perspective, because we know what's going to happen. We know that they're not going to tell the story correct. They're going to omit so many things. So it's important that we have this. I'm so excited, and so that I'm sitting here with amazing photographers, documentarians that are doing the work, and we need that. We need to uplift one another at all chances that we can, and it's very important for us to continue to document. I've covered things in Minneapolis for Daunte Wright. There's also somebody else new, Winston Smith, that was actually assassinated, to say the least. But we have to continue, and my work is still not done. I'm still going out there and still documenting, whether here at home or out in another city.
Yeah, I will echo that. History was always my favorite subject in school, and I am amazed at how much, I'm 35 years old, how much that I was not taught in school. And there's a reason behind that. And I I go on these weird tangents of thinking where I'm like, well, who made the history books and what photographers photos were they putting in there? Like all these questions that are in my mind. So when it came to feeling obligation, absolutely, because like Lucy was saying, I felt like we had to make sure that this history would be told the right way, that this story would be told from the perspective of people from the community that have skin in the game. And even if, my photos didn't make it, that I don't get famous or whatever, I felt like I still wanted to leave a legacy for the generations after me, whether it's my kids or grandkids or great grandkids, that they can see from my eyes, what I saw at that time. Because I wish that, I could discover like some old photos from like a older family member around like what was happening in the 60s and the 70s and 80s. So I just was thinking like, this is my opportunity to really like create something that's going to last, test of time. And I mean, beyond social media and all of that stuff, just like actual stories that are going to need to be told to people in the future. So that was, I felt like I had to get out there. It was no questions asked.
Yeah, I kind of find everyone who does make it out to document what's happening kind of feels an obligation. It's always interesting because you have hundreds of photographers in the same space and we all capture different stories from the similar situations. And I think it's less, we're kind of like sacrificing ourselves because it's not really more about us. It's about what's in front of us. And it's like it's the actual instant of what's happening that we all kind of have an interpretation and we capture slightly different. Like I've literally seen one march with 50 people taking the same pictures, but none of the pictures will come out the same. And from every single picture, you'll have a different story that you could interpret from it. So I think, at least with me, I find that I try to see what's in front of me because we're all going to be in different steps in life and in this world. So we could capture a situation slightly different than the next person. And if we have kind of something that we feel about it, I feel that it would kind of bring out more of the image and you would able to like tell more of the story from your lens. So we're kind of just trying to figure out what's happening in this moment in history and freeze it for the future.
So my obligation to document this when it comes to many things. First, is how it's portrayed in how it's portrayed in mainstream media, in news, and blog stuff like that. Also, I like to tell a story in my photography. So, and also my pictures, like the brother said over there, it could be history. It could be down in the future, like my children could see it, my future wife could see it, stuff like that. So, like the obligation I want to, like I said before, like I like to paint the picture in my movement. I like to tell stories from my own perspective, through my eyes, through my lens. So, yeah, that's what I say.
I think here's a little fun topic. Do we want to talk about our interaction with NYPD as photographers? Because I think it's dangerous. It is not easy it's a choice to go out there and be out there to protest. It's not pretty. It's not a party. I mean, there is joy. There is Black joy, but what you do may or may not see. It's like you have to be all eyes, and like I say, who protects us? We protect us. When you walk into those spaces, you have to be aware of what can happen. Anything can happen at any given point. There could be days there's 300 officers out there for 100, maybe 50 protesters. This is a militarized city. I don't care what you think, it is. So we protect us on to serve and protect on the car. It's a whole other game out there, and it is I mean, we're thankful we're sitting here. I'm being very honest. I myself have not been arrested. Many protesters have been arrested. I know Gia's back there in the back and speak on that. But this whole notion of protection as a journalist is that's just TV. It's you step into a danger zone when you're out there, and you're simply out there. You had to be visible last year. You couldn't stay home for that. But I wanted to bring that up on, and I agree with Amanda, like when I'm posting, I don't want to give space to blue. I don't want to do that. I want to show us out there, I want to show you who is out there. Babies, fathers, parents, families, a mix of people, a mix of gender expressions, everyone. But I'm not going to fill my page with blue, but I will show you the excessiveness of who is there and what they are doing out there protecting. But I wanted to just throw that out there.
I mean, I kind of find I've never really agreed with a lot of things cops did my whole life. And, you know, like I said, literally the first day that I went out protesting, I was arrested. So it's like, it's kind of funny because we're photographers and we try to capture humanity, but then we're met with police and they kind of are the exact opposite. Like, I think police are like anti-humanity because we've all seen them do things that were like, if you're a person and you have feelings, how can you sleep at night knowing that you're brutalizing a woman, a little kid, whatever the situation is? So it's like, I don't know, it's simply put, turned into a battle between like good and evil with activists and police officers.
So like, I also witnessed like police unnecessary roughness from the police, like, and for me, I never had any negative interaction with police. I talked to some officers in the movement though, and in my time in the movement, and I told this one officer, and every time I talk to officers, I always told officers that, like, you may be a police officer in uniform, but once you take off that uniform, you're a citizen just like us. So you're a black, especially a black police officer. So you're a black person just like us. So also, like, why could be like part of the system that really treats black people poor? Not only black people, but Latino and LGBTQ as well. So for me, the way the police acted throughout the protest in New York City is really unnecessary, especially the SRG unit, which is very, very, very brutal on protesters. So, yeah, I guess.
My perspective on it, you know, came from, I was fortunate enough not to get arrested, but I remember one protest I was covering, and the police were very, very aggressive with everyone, but pushing me out of the street and stuff like that, putting a baton on my chest. And that day I realized that it doesn't matter if I was out here with 30 cameras around my neck. At the end of the day, I'm a black man, and that's what they see. And I don't know what goes through their head when they're in that zone of like trying to use aggression, but it's almost like there's no rationale. They just, anybody that's in their way. And I just started to see that they were not there to protect anybody. They were not there to protect other people that were not a part of the protest. Like, their job was to brutalize the protesters and instill fear in them, instill fear in us to make us leave and go home. And it was just the resistance of us not wanting to go home that we were going to put up with that. But, you know, I realized right then and there that whether I had cameras, a media pass, or anything, it doesn't matter, because they're not thinking about any of that. They're there to crack skulls. So, you know, a lot of my perceptions on the role of policing and public safety have shifted dramatically. I mean, I grew up already looking at the police as adversaries. Growing up, I grew up not too far from here, and it's like you never really think about this, but seeing police every day should not be normal for anybody. Like people that live in the suburbs don't see police every single day.
It's like,
So we live in a constant state of surveillance, and yeah, so it's a lot that goes into the interactions. But you know, for me, being out there at the protest made me realize a lot that there's so many ways that they behave and ways that they're trained and taught to deal with crowds that is not keeping anybody safe. It's just putting more people in harm. And you know, I hope that all of the cries and all of the work put into defund and divest money actually happens. We'll see. We have a new mayor coming in who everyone is scared is gonna actually increase police presence and all of that stuff. So I don't know. It's a lot to be determined, but they definitely were not on the side. They were definitely just out there just like to crack skulls. They were not there to keep anybody safe. Protesters, civilians, whoever.
it's like I don't know, like I say, it's like when they're in the protest, it's kind of like they're like cloud nine, whatever. Like they're not focused on. They're just like their minds blank stuff. That they're only focused on the objective. The objective is to like police the protests. You no matter how peaceful it is, like you'd be the like most peaceful of them all, and they still be aggressive because I don't know. It's the objective by the boss, or I don't know, but. It's like I said again, it's basically on cloud nine, whatever.
I mean, January 6th is a perfect example of cops not being available, but yet they somehow are to police us when we're protesting. You know, like one of the funniest memes that came out of January 6th was I saw a meme that said, "Oh, it took so long for the cops to get there because they had to go home and change." That's what I think about cops right there being at protests and the way that they act. They're not there to protect anyone. Many of them that I've seen anyway, unfortunately, even the cops of color fall in line with that. They're not there to protect. And so if you're not gonna come out there and actually protect people and speak to people with dignity and respect, then how do you expect to get that back? So like I said, I don't give them space on my page. I don't give them space either at protests. And I specifically went out last year when they put up a curfew because we went through an entire pandemic and they wouldn't put up a curfew and hardly wanted to close certain businesses, but yet they want us in the house at 8 p.m. No, I made sure that I was out there protesting. I rode my bike directly in front of them. I wanted them to see that I'm not going inside. I'm not a fan.
It's like they're like a bunch of mindless robots. Yeah, I guess.
One incident that I think will live with me forever is the MLK Day. It was peaceful. We came from Barclays. I was proud of all the organizers because they finally they came together anyways. They came together and they, everyone combined. We all had a same goal. We marched. It was a silent march for about, I want to say maybe a good 15 minutes. Like it was just silent. We're out there. It was a pretty good crowd. Crossed the Brooklyn Bridge. It was too quiet. It was just too good to be true. But as soon as we get to City Hall, it was all hell broke loose. And it was just the excessiveness of their force. It was just, Sam mentioned SRG. Now that I know what they are and I see SRG on a car, I get so mad because they're so disgusting when we're out there in the streets, to press, to media, to independent journalists, to civilians. Like Henry mentioned, they don't care at all. And I think that day I worked out a lot because I jumped a gate like 3 times, trying not to get caught by police. It was just, I jumped hurdles, and it was just thinking about how we went from like literally peacefulness to activists and protesters being thrown on the floor. I think one of them were actually hog-tied because it was like arms. They had a police officer for each limb carrying them into the van. And that day I still can't, it plays in my mind because it's just like, it was literally no issues going on, nothing. Like, we were peaceful. Again, as I mentioned, all organizers came together. We marched on. It was a long march, but we marched on in the cold, crossed that Brooklyn Bridge, and it was just like they were waiting to just cause havoc as they usually do. But again, I never posted those pictures either. I have them, but I don't either. Yeah, I don't post those pictures as well. But it's there documented nonetheless. But yeah, police is something that I grew up around. I actually grew up in Bronx River Projects, which is right behind us. So yeah, it's policing. I've seen police in my neighborhood forever. And as Henry mentioned, I don't like them even more now. Like, I never liked them, but I don't like them even more now. And that's just my opinion on NYPD.
Should we, Gail, I didn't know, should we, Caroline or Ruvan, I don't know if they had anything to say. Should we give an opportunity while they're on Zoom? I'm not sure. I mean, I'm just putting it out there. Yeah, Ruvan and Caroline. Yeah.
Hey, Ruvan.
We're talking about the social media part or the historical part, the social responsibility part?
Whatever, Ruvan. Whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, it's interesting hearing everyone else talk about their own experiences, because I think that there are experiences that we all shared in that situation, whether it's the need to show people who aren't in New York what's been going on, to dealing with the police and it being super dangerous, to the emotional kinds of experiences. You know, when I was putting together the slideshow, I had to stop so often because it was just so intense to see it. And the edit that I was working on was the police brutality and then people coming together and making a larger edit of that, so you kind of see these waves of violence, and then you see these waves of people coming together. I think what Shawn was saying earlier is something that I kind of clocked really like on the first day, which was that it was a military operation. At Barclays on the first day, one of the pictures that I took a picture on purpose. It was really intense. It was someone who was definitely from the LGBTQ plus community being arrested and with excessive force, and someone behind those policemen with a Marines jacket. And it was very clear that that person had a Marines jacket on because they were there as a Marine, and they were kind of showing the police what to do. And that was on day one. So my need to, or the inspiration for making the slideshow and creating the archive that the slideshow is made from had to do with understanding that people are going to look back at this and we're going to be looking at it with a different lens. We're going to see that there was a lot of illegal activity happening between the police forces, joining forces national, with Donald Trump calling them all up and having a group meeting. So you've got that, and then the thing on January 6th, all these things add up to something that's much bigger than I think we all realize we've been taking pictures of. And I think having, a lot of this stuff doesn't really exist without the pictures or the video. And I think what makes this movement different is that it's in a digital age. And I think, considering other photographic movements or collectives, this is the first one that seems to have gotten moved a little bit away from the egos that are usually alongside the photographer and their authorship, I guess. So it was great to have 50 plus photographers all be willing to feed their images into a collective body of work that should hopefully stand some sort of historical test of time. And so when people look back, they'll really understand how much New York was galvanized and exactly why they were galvanized.
I didn't know if Caroline. I don't know if Caroline was still there.
Caroline, you want to chime in?
Even though it's 11 o'clock there. She left. Did she leave? I don't know. She could be sleeping. She's 7 hours ahead. She left. She's still she left New York. She's in France just for the summer. So if she doesn't come on, I mean, I was just giving her space. Oh, okay. And want to ignore you, Caroline.
Hi, no, I'm here. I'm here listening to everyone.
on the table, not hogging things. But is it a good time to open it up for you all if you want to ask questions? Don't be shy. Go ahead.
I've gone to a lot of different protests, and something that was said at one of them actually recently that I didn't realize last year. They mentioned something about agitators, and they kept saying, we see you, we know who you are. There are so many of you out here, and we have been studying the behaviors, and we can see you from a mile away. So if they're here right now, then you need to just either disperse, don't come back, like they were just calling them out. And I just want to know from your point of view, as persons that were documenting, did you ever feel that there were agitators that were there surrounding you and bringing attention your way as press or media or whatever? And did you have any conflict with those persons?
I'll say yes. I did.
I only laugh because I know who it is.
So the night that the Attorney General in Kentucky wasn't going to indict anyone, I can't remember the date right now, but for the Breonna Taylor murder, we started in Central Park, and one of the organizers specifically called out agitators, asked them to please leave the crowd. And I would say we got somewhere around like the Lower East Side, and you could just see them circling everyone, like the agitators. And I'm around a bunch of them. And I would say before that day, I've often been very I'm focused on getting what I need to do, protesting and leaving, right? That night I stayed a little longer, and I guess I stayed long enough to see the foolery. So all I remember is just like a bag of paper confetti being burst open and then paint exploding. And I was like, what? So I saw the people around me, and I tapped one of them and I said, listen, no, we can't have that here. They asked us to be peaceful. You're drawing attention to the cops. They're going to come over here and just basically attack us. And they were like, this girl, it was a white girl. She was like, you don't get to police us and tell us how to protest. And I was like, I will tell you in a space with black people whose black lives are on the line. So you can either get out, or yes, I will out you. I don't care, because you're creating chaos for us, and you're not going to go down for it. It's going to be us. We're going to catch the bullet. So, and I put my camera back in my bag because I was like, listen, if we have to go to bat for this, we will. I suggest you stop right now. And, she fell back with her crew of people that were acting crazy. Then another guy came up and he was like, well, I saw black girls doing it too. I said, I don't care. They can leave as well. So I don't condone that whatsoever, especially when you've been asked by organizers, even as photographers, when we go into a space as protesters, we have to respect what we've been asked to do. Mm-hmm. You don't walk in there and disrespect someone. If someone asks you not to take a photo, put the camera down. If someone asks you not to agitate, don't. And you have to respect that. No matter if you have a camera or not, no matter if you think you're there for Black lives, respect what you've been asked to do. So I'm totally not for it. And yes, I've gotten into it with them.
Yeah, that's a true story, right? There's the truth there.
What I done last year, the nonviolence going on, it was like the nonviolence going on, over George Floyd, and I heard quick stuff that those rumors, last year there was rumors going on in Manhattan, Bed-Stuy, Soho, then Midtown. Midtown, they smash windows, they break into Parliament, probably stealing stuff over George Floyd, and then what we heard about the curfew, and then we had a curfew last year. Have you heard? The question is, have you heard about these rumors last year, or did you get about that?
I think the root of the issue is that why the looting and the riots happened is that people didn't know how to handle the situation because everyone was filled with anger and they kind of want to retaliate. But you know, this is America. This isn't like Chile or anywhere where we come together as a collective to overthrow the government. So, you know, we're kind of put in the position where we're figuring out how can we make a message and not be like swept under the rug and make something, you know, meaningful. But, you know, sometimes the anger and the hate takes over our judgment. And I think that's what led to the riots and the looting in the beginning.
But also just, that's what they want to focus on. You know, it was like, I mean, the cars came, I mean, if I'm understanding your question correctly, but the cars came in from out of state, parked the cars, picked up the containers of the bricks, did what they had to do, and they left town. So it's like the focus was really about the looting and the destruction, I think, to diffuse what was really what was really happening, because they didn't want to, like, oh no, the only reason police are out there is that they're afraid of the power that we have. So when we come together, that's the fear. They're not gonna be out there any other reason. So the looting to me, and looking back, I think was just like, let's focus on this, because we're gonna make it look like everyone's out here to cause destruction. That's what I like early on. So we can put a curfew, we're gonna do all this so that you all don't come out here, because I'm afraid of you all being out here in masses, because that means that we'll outnumber the police, and Lord knows we wouldn't want that, right? So, but that's just me talking, you know.
Yeah, I also just want to add that too often we end up focused, like, I don't know if it's mainstream media or whatever, but we end up focusing on the symptoms instead of focusing on the problem. Looting to me was a symptom of something greater, like the wealth disparities in these neighborhoods. Like, you know, this is why people saw that as an opportunity. And I think that conversation is too long for them to have on the evening news. So what they would rather do is just show the footage on loop of people breaking glass and running out with sneakers and TVs and all this stuff.
Fits into their narrative.
Yeah, it's a convenient narrative, because the real conversation that needs to be had is way more nuanced, and it takes way more intelligence to have it. And that is what we need to talk about, is why, you know, 99% of the wealth is concentrated. I mean, 1%, you know what I'm saying? The top 1% has all the wealth, and you know, everybody, you know, those are the conversations and the things that we need to be focused on, like addressing. But let's talk about people looting, because that's fun and that's easy to discuss.
Also like to add, I believe, like, personally, I believe I believe rioting or looting are justified in the way I see it, because, like,
Reparations. I'm joking. Get your Gucci back.
So I feel like, yeah, so I feel like looting and rioting are justified because, like, peaceful, because we do a peaceful protest, like, even after peaceful protest, there's still no laws for us Black people. There's still, like, no protection for Black people. There's no reparations, like Lucy said. But so to me, like, I think looting is probably the only way to express our anger, our frustration, all of that. People and media took it the wrong way, like, all it's lies for no reason. So, like he said, like, they rather focus on the system, but not the problem, the root of it. That's what I say.
And even if you look back at Hurricane Katrina, instead of them focusing on people dying, they made sure they zoomed into people looting stores. But they actually needed things, you know, at that time. They were floating in water and needed food, but yet that's what they focused on instead of trying to figure out how to get help. So
that's their default. That's their playbook. That's part of the strategy to present. And they always do that. That's, you know, what they know, that's how it goes, and that's the expectation. And, you know, as we talk about agitators, there are agitators who may start it and then gets caught in the flurry of the mob, so-called mob, and then people kind of participate and kind of regret it later what they've done. But, you know, this is what is anticipated, and it's gone on for centuries. That's what they expect them to do.
Yeah, I have a two-part question. First part, if you guys go to different boroughs and shoot and capture different boroughs. And then the second part, Sean, I talked to you on Instagram before my book on the street art, first plywood, NYC. So I photographed the street art, primarily in the new area, which was Soho, where the hundreds of artists came and painted, but it wasn't just Soho. The street art was all over the place, all over the world, including Minnesota, where there was about 700 boards painted on in Minnesota as well. So that first part is that you guys get in your cars and go to different boroughs and shoot, or you kind of stay in the second part. It's focused on protest.
Let me just, I've been requested to repeat the question so people on the feed could hear. So you asked two questions. I'm put on the spot here. You asked, did we shoot in different boroughs? And I forgot the other first one. You asked,
about the street art.
Oh.
And I met you on Instagram. Because I brought my book.
Right.
In general.
Has anyone been shooting the street art? Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay, so the second question, and Kurt Boone, this gentleman here has a fabulous book on I don't know, I bought it on artwork on, remember when our city was boarded up? Because the stores, people were afraid of them being broken into.
Sweet green, protect the kale.
So there was a lot of protest mural art done down in a ton, if you all were able back then to photograph that. So this question is, did any of you all document that act of protesting through the murals? Because if you weren't, it was fabulous. It was almost the city was alive again, but it was on plywood. So this gentleman has a book, but I'll let him plug himself afterwards. But two-fold question on where did we all shoot, and did anyone document any of the murals on the street art? I hope I did that right.
Yeah. So to answer your first question, I documented all my protests, all except one borough, and that stayed the island, because I don't like going to stay in the island, to be honest with you. Like taking a train or taking a ferry, not good for me. I'd rather take a train over the bridge. So also, the second question though, I actually took a short amount of pictures covering art that's related to protests. Actually, like early on in the movement, I actually took part of the mural painting in downtown Brooklyn at the front of the Borough Hall, the Brooklyn Borough. I know you've seen it before. It's a Black Lives Matter mural painting, and it was at Geralamo Street at Borough Hall. So I took part in that, and I took pictures for that. So as well as I took the pictures in Soho. So yeah, I did. I took a lot of pictures. So yeah.
Did you all want to talk about where you focused on?
Yeah, I think at the beginning, I was taking trains and wherever I could find, because I was just trapped in. After the pandemic, I was just so in a box, and once this happened, I was like, oh, like whatever's happening is kind of an opportunity to move around the world. I think if there was like a protest on like Jupiter, I'd take a freaking jet and go to Jupiter, and I go anywhere at that point. I do remember, I don't know what happened first. It was I must have come after the riots, but yeah, Soho was boarded up for a while, and I remember everyone was like, oh yeah, the stores are like coffins, so everyone started painting over all the decks of it. And I think for a week I was out there shooting, just because I think artists were coming out from all over the city and just doing murals on every storefront. And yeah, it was like a beautiful thing for a little bit before they took it down.
Listen.
I didn't have a specific place to shoot. Wherever it was the same. I was tired of being in the house, and yeah, I'm a homebody, but I don't like to be told to stay home. It's weird. Like you telling me to stay home now, I want to go outside. So yes, I shot in like every borough. I didn't go to Staten Island. I feel the same way about Staten Island, but I would have went to Staten Island if I had to. But I did not get a chance to capture the murals. Only mural I got to capture was actually at the IFC. I have that same similar photo where it says, that's one of a few that I have that I caught the boarded up. But I did not, Soho did not capture my eye at the time, I guess. I don't know. I was just more focused on like, where we're going to march on. Like, I wasn't really focused on the mural or the artwork at the time. I guess I just had tunnel vision, or I don't know. I just did not focus on that. But that I have captured a lot of there. So I'll tell you that, Minneapolis. But I will tell you that because my first protest I went to was June 7th. Because I was trapped in Florida when everything happened with George Floyd. So I didn't get back home until like the beginning of June. So I didn't get to experience New York protests until June 7th. And then a month went by and I didn't do anything. And it wasn't until the end of July that since then I just been full force. But in Minneapolis, I think from the first time, June 7th, till even now, my mind has shifted, like, of how I want to tell this story. I think I went in with just documenting, like I had this, like, I'm going to document, and then I started to, because I don't really like, what I had to get out of, I'm not really much of a talker or to people. I have to fill you out first before you'll get a whole conversation. So Shawn, you put me on the spot today with these strangers. But so that's just like I have to. It's a vibe thing. So I'm all about my vibe. So if I don't vibe with you, I'll photograph you, but then I'll keep it moving. And sometimes when I take a picture and I see it, I'm like, all right, next time I see them, I'm gonna approach them and have a conversation, see what they're about, and then. So I just feel like I just shifted. My mind shifted in this whole process of documenting. And now I want to make it a little bit more personal of that person's story and telling their story out there, which is something I wish somebody would have done for me when I was younger. But, that's it's trauma. But
so there's a few of us on the panel, Lucy, Sam, and myself. We shoot for the NYC protest coverage group. Outside of just for ourselves, and it's a collective of photographers and videographers that shoot protests happening around NYC and sometimes outside of it. So it did bring us to different boroughs, different states to cover stories. And so we did get out there. I did not capture anything specifically in Soho when they had the stores boarded up, but I've definitely captured murals on plywood since last year in May. So.
Oh, great.
I'll just.
Oh
yeah.
It is. Referendums on plywood or walls, because you saw everything, especially like out of jail. Hundreds of artists paid, pieces of that.
I think it was in June, the beginning of June. I was just on my bike everywhere, and I always am really interested in murals in general. So I didn't even get down to Soho till mid-June, and I live in Harlem. But I just was blown away at just all the art. That's how I met Amir. I met one muralist just striking up conversation. And I think during this pandemic or during protests, we've all wanted to talk. I think we've all been more open on talking. But I photographed so much on when the stores are boarded up. I was like, this is ridiculous. I mean, I have to get a photo. Apple Store. It was just this. It's all enveloped. It's all about the time and looking back at like what we went through. That's even traumatic. We didn't even talk about trauma, but even seeing everything boarded up on trauma and not being able to go, what is that telling us, you know? But I definitely spent time and then it was gone. It was like if you weren't there and you didn't see it, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. I know there's two here, and I want to be respectful of time too. And I know we'll all still be here, but I don't want to hog. I know we've been sitting a long time, and I want to be respectful. The gentleman in the back, and you had your hand up. Go ahead.
I'm glad that you mentioned about trauma. I act as well as the spoken word, and I'm a big advocate on artists and their self-care and their support systems with the things that you photograph and the things that you can make of. What are your thoughts in regards to your own self-care? You guys have support systems and people that you can lean on with everything that you pretty much been into.
I'm gonna, for the listeners out there, and we actually talked about that before we came to the panel. So the question was being out on the streets and documenting and being affected. How do we take care of ourselves? What are our support systems? How do you take care of ourselves? And that's super important. I mean, it was nonstop. I mean, we were just nonstop every day, get up, go. And I think for me, January this year, I was away during the MLK day, but I don't think it was until January I was like, oh my God, I'm tired. I mean, it wasn't even the holidays. It was January. I went to Puerto Rico, and I was like, I think I'm sleeping. I think taking time away, really listening to for me, it was really listening to my body and saying, it's okay. I mean, because I felt so obligated. I was like, I gotta go, I gotta do it. The revolution won't be televised unless I televise. But I had to listen to myself. And even July this month, I told myself I'm not working. I was like, you have to recover, recenter. This is a lot. It's a lot. It's like Ruvan said, I can't go through all my photos. It takes you right back. And I think I learned to really listen to myself and just say, it's okay to stay in the house. It's okay. And I think we all didn't know each other. We just were out there. But I think over the months, getting to know each other and talking with other people about what you're going through, and also just being on the streets every day, it's a certain type of trauma. So that trauma is different from my friends who haven't been on the streets. So I think talking to other people who've been on the street every day about how you feel just helps. But that's Shawn.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this before we started, and I think one of the things that I started doing was waking up early and going to the beach, like for the sunrise. Like I must have did that like 6-7 times, starting like last July, because I just started to realize that I needed to create spaces for myself to reflect and to sort of like also get away from like everything, So I was going like out to Rockaway and stuff like that. That's one thing that I could think of. But I know like just talking to my friends and my family about what I was seeing out there, what I was witnessing, like having a place to unpack like my thoughts and just like share my experiences was also very, very crucial and helpful, because otherwise I would just be replaying some of this stuff over and over in my head. Like some of the things I saw, I remember just like just sitting down and I could hear like chants in my head, like protest chants. So yeah, it was a lot. And I think I was happy that I had like a support system, and then I also was able to try some new self-care routines. So that helped a lot.
So what I would do is like also like to take some time off, like a couple of days. I could take a couple of days off from the movement. I mean, the movement will always be there. Okay, so you don't have to go like many protests at once. You could like there's protests like almost every day here. So like what I would do is like outside of the movement, I'm a photographer. I'm a portrait photographer. I do photo shoots, stuff like that. I take pictures of subways, New York City. If you see my Instagram, like I shoot models. I shoot like subways, like cities, stuff like that, just to calm my nerves. Also, I listen to music, especially 90s hip hop. I listen to Biggie, Tupac, Jay-Z, Nas, A Tribe Called Quest. So I listen to them just to calm my mind as well as like playing video games too. So yeah.
Oh, I have no opinion about any of that. I don't know. I've been.
Okay, Jarrett.
I've been now like it's still taking a toll on me. It's like because it's like you walk through the streets and it's like, all right, so I guess a month or 2 or 3 ago we're all walking through here like thousands deep, and now you have like a business guy walking with like his suit and he's just like talking on his phone. So I don't know. I think we all gotta like decompress. I think we need a little more time before that conversation needs to happen.
So it took me a long time to figure out what my method to deal with everything that I don't think I found it yet. One thing I do appreciate about, I guess, New York opening back up is, so I'm originally a sports photographer. So street ball is back in full effect. So I've been selective of where I'll go shoot, and it'll take my mind away from everything. So I think that's been helpful in the last few weeks. So I'll go to either, like last week I was at Rutgers, I'll go to West 4th. I was supposed to shoot something this morning here in the Bronx, but I didn't make it on time. I think just finding something that I love, and I love shooting basketball, is helping me find a way to cope with everything that I've dealt with in the last year. So
for me, it's been, I didn't realize that I needed a break until after we came back from Minnesota, and I shared this with Lucy. I think we went to Dante Wright's funeral, and it wasn't until I walked out and I went to a friend's dance class. She had purposely set up a dance class for her high school students, and she invited me to come to learn ballet. I've never done ballet, but it was after that in that class that I was like, I haven't taken a break, and I don't feel well. Like, just from, even though the verdict was one thing that we could maybe feel some relief with, I was like, I need a break. But after that, I was like, I need to start pulling back from protests, and I thought that I could still come back and return to New York and keep shooting. And we were at a Palestinian march, and I was like, you know what, I have to check out right here. And so since last month, I've been on break, and what I was focusing on even before all of this was just showing Black joy, and that's something that I've purposely been posting on my own account, is to show Black people doing joyous things. Just whether you're eating, dancing, singing Tevin Campbell, at the top of your lungs at a party, like, that's what I've been focused on, because that brings me joy. And visiting family, therapy, that's important. Yoga and the beach when I can. Anytime, I love to swim, so anytime I can get in the water and swim, that's what I've been doing, taking a break.
Jarrett, I'm sorry, sis. Go ahead. 1 second, Jarrett. Ladies first, young man.
Jarrett.
Yes.
I first want to say thank you.
Thank you.
I'm trying to hold it. I didn't think I was emotional.
Okay.
So when you say that you see pictures and you go back, that's what happened. A lot of us work, we never shared the elements for now. So I started speaking from the eye because I want to hold other people's grace for something. So I'm just saying I appreciate you, because what has happened for me is that people have been in my face of cameras who I did not invite. They don't ask consent, and then also people choose where to go, right? So that was a very good question, like, where did you go? The cops choose who to target, and which protest to target, and the media, either mainstream or not, chooses which protests to go to. And after sitting here and listening to you all, I recognize that this is probably an organic process for you. It wasn't necessarily these strategic things. But one thing that is going to be strategic going forward is how you choose. So I know it's a little bit of your conversation earlier, and I apologize for being late. And if you've answered this already, I'm sorry. But the choosing going forward, how do you choose so your images don't become part of the trauma? You know? So I have a question, but
I've chosen just to.
I'm sorry to reiterate for the feed after the question. So the sister asked, she was taken back on because we spoke about the trauma and looking at all the photos and taking you back to those moments that are very traumatic. And the question asked was, how do you choose what photos to take or photos to post? Photos to post. What is the selection and why do you choose that particular photo? What draws you to it? And she also mentioned, moving forward. Thank you. Yeah, moving forward, how are we going to pick them? I hope I did okay.
So for me, moving forward, I've chosen to, again, like you said, be selective about where I go. If I know there's going to be a huge police presence, I'm good. If I think anything is going to seriously erupt in violence, for right now, in me managing my own trauma and exposure, I'm not going to shoot that. I think what I'm focused on right now is just the world is opening back up. I think we've seen a lot of pain. And so what I want to do is give the gift of joy right now on my page. So that's what I would like to share. Not to say that I'm not, actively out in the street or still being an activist. That's always going to be a part of me. But I think I'd rather show joy right now.
For me, moving forward, what I've been doing has been, it is being selective, but I want to shine, because I'm still going back and forth to Minneapolis. So my thing is that mainstream media left and no one's showing what's been going on back there. And even with my photos of Minneapolis, if you look on my page, I don't share trauma porn. I try to capture those candid moments that will speak for itself, that I can just put a couple words and you know exactly what that photo is telling you. That's just my style that I developed as I started the movement. It wasn't something that I used to do always, and I like it, so I'm sticking with that. So I feel like I'm just being selective. Again, if there's something that's going on here in New York, I'm definitely down. Again, if there's police presence, I don't really capture that either. I leave that to the filmmakers to catch it on video instead of stills. But for me, it's just, again, moving forward, I am focused, I am covering stuff here at home, but I am, just so everyone knows, I'm still going back and forth. We still got 3 other police officers that are going on trial in March. Mm-hmm. We got the federal charges for all 4 of them. We got Dante Wright's killer about to face some charges. So it's a lot of stories that are gonna come out from Minneapolis that I would love to share with everyone here in New York. So
that's a good question. Sometimes when I'm out, sometimes I like looking at just like, what are people wearing? Like, why did they choose that jacket that had power to the people on their back? And it's the image of the back of the jacket that showed this person showed up, but they put that jacket on for a reason, to show that's their protest or that's their power. So to me, it's like the little things. It's almost in Minneapolis, the sister had she had her nails done beautifully, and she was holding the sign. And to me, it was about her hand holding the sign. and not necessarily the pain in her face, but it was like this, and she was an older one. I was like, this is the grown sister holding a sign with beautiful nails that showed about self-care and also just how she's holding it. And it's always like the detail that I like, that shows the movement is still alive, but it's who showed up, how they showed up, or what they wore, or how they're holding their hand next to the person next to them. That still gets the image across, but not necessarily like the big canvas, but the little things. But that's a good question. Thank you. I know Derek had a question, and then Cynthia.
Trying to get my head word as best as possible. Though photographers are on the ground, your vision, and my vision, in moments are limited to the focal of the lens. And this might place it into the form of a tunnel vision, of where focusing on the frame, trying to capture the moment in that split second, and where we might miss the full effect of what's been captured. When do you realize in the process whether it is picking up the camera, lifting the lens? Is it in the editing process, or is it when you see your photo on the wall or when it's posted to social media? When do you experience the full impact of the image you captured?
Okay, let me translate really quick. Derek, who is a part of NYC protest coverage and next to Katie, asked, when do you feel, I'm sorry, I had it. When do you feel the whole impact of the photo?
To answer your question, my brother, it's so I think it's a little bit of all three of them actually, because when I take a picture, look at it, oh my God, it's a fire shot, to be honest. And then editing it and looking over through it to see how many pictures I take, because how many pictures I take, because I usually in a protest I usually take like 600 pictures plus. So yeah, that's a lot. So I'm looking through and see which one the editing and posting them, and to see a lot of people comment and liking your post. And now onto the exhibit. I think it's more. It's a little bit of like all of them. To say.
Well, I think it's one of those things where you have to kind of be present in. It's kind of when you have to figure out your past, present, and future, because all the time when you take that picture, in the back of your head, wow, this was an amazing picture that I just took in that instance. But 1 second later, that instance will pass, and you can't really relive that until you take another look at that picture. Then you're like, wow, I'm gonna relive this. This is amazing. So it's kind of like you can't really pinpoint when the time will be. I don't know what that mantra is, like understanding the present, like living in the present. So it would probably be, I think, you first realize it. The second you take that picture, you already know that, wow, I hit this mark. But you're just reminded as many times as you see it over and over again, which builds up your appreciation for it.
I would say the same thing happens to me when I'm in the moment. I'll notice that, I capture what I was looking to get. But I think it's later on when you're editing the photo, you really see like the depth of what you took a photo of, and as you said, start to appreciate it more.
Yeah, Henry.
No, I agree. I mean, for me, I would say if I had to put a percentage, like 90% of the time, it's in the edit that I'm able to unpack the story and like look at every area of the frame and figure out what's going on. A lot of the times when I'm out there, I'm relying on my intuition, on my instinct to know where to place myself. And, with my style of shooting, I know this is technical, but he's a photographer clearly, because he asks a technical question. I prefer wider angle lenses because I know I'm going to get more information into that photo from the jump. So I know that I'm gonna have stuff in there that I needed based on how I compose it in real time. But then it's really not until I could look at that image and compare it with the ones that I took like 30 seconds before and after that I know like, okay, this is the one. So yeah, 90% for me is in the edit.
For me, it's post, so it's an edit. Like that's when I know I can see the full picture in post.
So I have a question about sort of your style choices and selections, and thinking about, they're also beautiful. And you used to, back in the day when you had the film processing lab and you were in there putting in chemicals, kind of figuring out how you're going to make things. Now you do it digitally, you're editing. And I'm just wondering, the beautiful black and whites that are up, I'm wondering if that was just sort of like a choice to be sort of a nod to past civil rights protest photography, or is it, in that sort of genre, in that vein, or were you just kind of, deciding that, just playing around, because we have lots of choice now to be able to do and be really artistic and choose to do color or sepia or black and white or whatever. So that was sort of one part of the question. The other part of the question I wanted to know is how many shots over the years do you all think that you took?
Shots, and also how many pictures have you taken over the year? Should we start with that first? Okay.
Yeah, I might go to that too.
Does anyone have black and
for
white?
me, I enjoy black and white photography. There's a saying by a famous photographer. I can't remember who at the moment, but that color photography is more descriptive. Black and white is more interpretive, because color theory, colors tell you how to feel. They invoke emotions. So sometimes I think when it comes to storytelling and documentary photography, I think black and white is usually the choice that people make, because it forces you to pay close attention to what's going on and try to unpack what's the story. I also just enjoy black and white aesthetically. I've always been a fan of it. It is a nod to me to the past times, from the old days. So a little bit of that, and it's a little bit of the technicalities behind that too.
Also, that's really the first.
Oh, I don't know. I want to say it was somewhere around 30,000, just from all of the protests. And it's a very small percentage of those that are great photos or good photos to me, right? But like Lucy was saying, we don't get rid of them. They all in the photo library, in the archive. Because you never know. Sometimes I go back to old photos that I thought were bad, and then I see something different. After some time has passed, yeah.
So for me, I think black. I prefer, well, I don't know. For me, it's 50-50 between color and black and white. I think black and white tells. I think black and white it's more like a storytelling type of thing. Because when you put a picture in black and white, it reveals a broader story. It reveals everything. You see these pictures right there, or any pictures right there. It has a story. It has a story in them. So for me, I usually go with both, but for select pictures, I go with black and white. For the second question, I guess. So the last time I checked, I took 13,000 images. So, and that was 2 months ago. So I probably have around 25,000, or a little over 25,000. And I'm only 19, so I took mad pictures over here.
Do you really gotta throw your age out there?
I like to brag on my. I like to brag on. I like.
If you all didn't know, Sam's birthday is next week. He will be the big 20.
I like to brag about my age. I like to brag about my age though, because no other photographer my age has done nothing to do with it. It's not doing what I'm doing right now. So that's why I like to brag about my age. So.
Shouts out to Sam. I think it's a mix of what Henry said and what Sam said. I do like color. I do like black and white. I really go with what I'm trying to interpret in that particular photo. If I move to do black or white, I do that. But sometimes I do both. So one of the photos that was submitted to Shawn for her first exhibit for Capture the Movement, I actually left part of the photo in black and white and highlighted one part of it in color. So sometimes I do both. And then as far as photos, I think I'm in the realm of 25,000 as well. I don't get rid of anything. It like pains my heart. I also have a hard time when someone asks me to select photos for something. I would take forever. You might want to check in on me in a few days because I swear I will have only gotten from 50 to 45. Like it's kind of bad, but I'm trying to do better.
Also about posting photos too as well. It's a long process of posting photos. First of all, it's you know how like Instagram crop settings are really, really poor, right? So you just have to choose between a square or a rectangular. So what I do is I border my pictures, as you can see in my Instagram. I border my pictures, then I put my own logo in, and select the 10 pictures in, then select the hashtags, then and post, keep it all together post. So it's a very long process. So.
Oh, Anthony.
So, in documenting, movement, there's a lot of tension, there's high emotions, but I understand right underneath Henry's photo. So my question is about experiences of joy in the midst of, frustration and anger. And what was that like? Have you experienced joy in documents? So, because even like over there, you got frustration, you got a smile right there. So, any experiences of joy during the protest?
So the question is experiences with joy during the protests, if we could talk about that.
I experienced joy in the movement, and recently as a Pride protest in the 28th. So I see people dancing, people laughing, smiling, all that. It was a great time. It was a great time that day. Going further back, when Donald Trump lost the election, I see a lot of people happy in Washington Square Park. As well, also a lot of things happen in Washington Square Park where people are really happy and stuff like that. Also, there have been a lot of protests. It's kind of hard to remember, but let me see. But actually throughout the movement, I've seen a lot of joy. So, and I really have fun. That's all you gotta say about that.
I mean, I think our first goal is to capture the joy of the movement. That was like what drew us to everything, and it makes us sleep better, it makes us work better. I mean, like our first intention is to capture joy, but unfortunately, there's so much instances of the opposite our way, and I kind of find it was a little bit strange because people are more drawn to instances that are not filled with joy. I mean, I think a small amount of people will appreciate the joy, or maybe it's just the media, maybe just outside of personal experiences, people are kind of drawn to the pain and the anguish and the hate and the fighting more than the actual joy we're trying to capture, because I think that at least it seems like us as photographers, we're kind of focusing on capturing the highlights and the joy and the smiles and the benefits of being in the Black Lives Matter movement. But there's so much that's like kind of on top, that's crushing it down, that's kind of being focused on, which is kind of deriving what we're trying to capture.
So, one of my most memorable marches was the Black Women's March last July on the FDR. I mean, it was Times Square all the way up to Harlem. I don't even know where that energy came from because I had come back from a trip and still marched. But I remember this was the time like all Black women were we didn't even know singing, dancing, and it was like that. You're feeling it, and you felt we controlled that FDR. I mean, it was such power that everyone, it was release, it was therapeutic, it was unity, it's community. And so you don't know what's going to happen when the chant turns into a dance, the dance turns into a hug. And I felt like when I kept saying about liberation, you don't know what comes out of that. So I definitely feel like we've experienced a lot of joy. And some of it's just like claiming yourself and being able to do that. Like last year was like, yes, and feeling like, like, I don't know if it's here, the woman, the postal worker in the car, there's a lot of power in the fist. And wherever it is, protesting through a street and people peeking out through the windows. I feel like there was a lot of, that's what I want to see. That's what I want to feel because we need it, I want to,
I was just gonna say, I've definitely captured joy. I mean, whether it's in a hug, unexpectedly, or watching people make each other laugh. Like I remember shooting an INSAR's protest last year, and these two guys, they've been friends for years. They hadn't seen each other maybe 5 years. I just learned that from ear hustling on their conversation. But the way that they embraced each other, like little boys hugging, I actually captured that. And I thought, look at this, like, no one, they're not feeling too cool to hug each other. They're two Black men, hugging. And all that really mattered is like, they're seeing each other for the first time in the pandemic, after not seeing each other even before that. But it's like, in that moment, they were just happy to see each other. It didn't matter, like, if they were two men, they didn't care. I mean, they hugged for a while, and it was just like, it was so good to see that. And so I love to capture that kind of joy in a protest because, again, it humanizes all of us.
Well, I don't mean to be rude. I feel like Gail. I mean, I'm looking at the time. Okay. I move around, but I don't want to be disrespectful of people's time. If we feel we can keep talking and be here, but I don't want to keep us all, not to cut us off, but I want to be respectful for time. We can still be around, but I don't want to make you all feel captive here.
My question is, I'm not sure I heard, because I'm in the background, interrupting, but what's next? Oh.
Go ahead, Sam.
For me,
Sam is showing us. Sam is on it.
what's next? Well, just my birthday's next. That's what it is. So, but what's next? Well, just doing my own thing then. Just be out there, shoot, or whatever. It's just shoot for the movement. Like I said before the meeting, I will be in this movement till the day I die, I guess. So, have a life ahead of me. So, yeah, it's just doing my own thing. That's what's next for me.
I agree. I'm still going to continue to document, and whether that's through camera, through taking photos, or through podcasting, I'm going to continue to tell our stories until the day that I die. So.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I'm committed to community, committed to building community, and committed to creating honest depictions of our communities. And right now I'm studying journalism, so that's really like my next thing. I'm trying to break into doing some more freelance work, but I cover a lot of different topics, you know, all around community, right? So whether it's protests or groups that are, you know, intervening in violence in our communities, because that's another stigma that I feel like is out there, that we only show up when it's like the police are killing us, but we're not doing anything about the violence in our own communities. So I'm trying to focus on telling more of those stories as well, because I just like correcting false narratives about us. And I think that that's what my life's calling really is with regards to, you know, to what I do visually.
I think for me, it's crazy for me to say curator because that's not my, I've worked in the film and television industry for 25 years. So this exhibit, and this is half of it, there's 60 images. It was something new I've never done, but I learned, I mean, one of my whole thing was like, don't wait on anyone, do it yourself. Like, no one's going to make that exhibit. No one's going to put it up. So I want to keep challenging myself on creating space and just do it. And I learned a lot through the process. The exhibit I want to keep showing around. I'm looking for places to show it, but also there's a lot of stories that I want to tell within the movement, my documentary background. So there's a lot of filming I want to do, the interviewing. And I think about where is all this image, where are they landing, where are all the images, and what are the teachers and educators doing with this movement in teaching? That's really what I'm interested in. And so I want to make sure that we're teaching the movement correctly. And I want to be able to provide imagery and tools for educators, because it can't just be a paragraph. So that's kind of my 2 cents. And before Lucy, going back to the NYPD, I want to let you all know, the second exhibit I had in Brooklyn, which was an art gallery space, the NYPD sat out there the entire time for an art gallery space because they deemed this as threatening. So they sat and there's pictures of the cops sitting in the car while people were watching and performing outside. So it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's art, protesting, they're always watching. I just had to throw that in there for you all.
For me, it's what's next is just continuing to document, continuing to build the stories, tell the stories. That's it.
Jarrett, the question, I'm not gonna let, just what's next for you?
Well, I didn't really finish, so I'm still kind of on this journey. I'm kind of focusing more on finding the actual story. So yes, I think I'm gonna be focusing a little bit more of interviews behind the faces that we captured throughout the years, and if they achieved their goals and kind of what where their mindset was in this last year. So it's kind of to figure out the actual stories behind what we captured, because an image can only tell you so much. But you know, if we get to the root of who the person is and you know what their interpretation of that day was, I think we're going to know a little bit more about what we captured.
Caroline? And she knows.
What's next?
Hi, everyone. What's next? I've been thinking while listening to everyone. I'm always drawn to people that I meet, and there's people that I meet that draw me to the story in the same way. And I've been really focused on the children and the future. So I've been starting new work on Black and brown children and how to empower what they do, especially I've been really really touched by the community in the Rockaway that's teaching children to participate. So we're working on this. So that's my main focus right now.
It's really
But I think we need to do more with Shawn and bring the children movement to new places too.
Thanks, girl. It's really so.
Bye.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Adios.
Well, yeah, hey, so what's next? In a strange way, I found myself to be one of the, I guess, people who are parts of BRAC are here. So I kind of see my place of getting back to work. But with all this information, I feel it's what I'm focused on is figuring out how to document it so that we have our own stories over time, and so that they're told by the people who are there. So that means making books. Again, I'm working on a book on my own. I'm also trying to figure out how other people can make content that's not just going to live on Instagram. There's another opportunity that Shawn created for the slideshow to be shown in New York, so that's going to happen. I've also started this organization called NY for NY that it's kind of like an arts organization that's trying to use artists to elevate the message of the movement. And our first goal was to help, was to pair really famous photographers with activist candidates, and several of them have won. So one of the things that NY for NY is doing is getting different, throwing different events to have groups like Protect Black Business meet Strategy for Black Lives, and then have it photographed by someone who wasn't necessarily part of the protest group, but someone who has a lot of eyes on their Instagram feed, and to try and build the community outside of our own movement group. I think it was really hard for a lot of people to be out on the streets taking pictures, and a lot of people that I know who went out on the first days didn't go out after that because it was just genuinely was too dangerous, especially for those photographers I'm thinking of. So I think there's a need that I feel to make sure that the message spreads to beyond just our circles that know about it and everything else, and really try to make our visual statement something that's international and something that museums and curators and historians all are able to not only have access to, but hopefully will want to show as our own community creates more and more content that expresses the protest, like just what happened in New York last year. I think that's it for me.
Thank you, amazing, thank you so much. Thank you, audience, for being here. I can't say anything other than to say I've got an idea of doing an event for you guys in New Orleans.
Oh, let's bring it.
I love New Orleans.
I'm there. So, I want some double.
And I think I've been in a really fabulous space in a beautiful community neighborhood, Maryland Black. And I think you can do that. I'll start working on it.
Okay. And that was also another part of the question I wanted to kind of ask. Do you want to stay in small community venues, or do you want to go to like
Japan,
or major institutions to show this and travel it, and Also, how has the social media spaces, how is that sort of giving you a way to showcase your work? And, you know, especially with this idea of you're able to curate your own spaces online and social media. You say you're not putting up, you know, protest porn, et cetera, and you know, keeping the police story out of it, because we know what the police story is and how traumatizing that is. But at the same time, not putting it there, is it censure? Is it not telling the whole story? So, you know, I'm just wondering, you know, how do you come to those decisions? You have the right and the space to decide what you want to say, for sure, but I wonder if in your own spaces, when you exclude the police, do you put up a little narrative about how nasty they've been and why they don't deserve a space in your, you're not giving them any airtime, or, you know, because people are looking for that, right? And they're, you know, as they look, they may not necessarily, just because they've been trained to sort of see two sides of the story, they may say, oh, I'm just seeing Black Floyd, but how could this possibly be in the middle of a protest, you know? And so I'm just wondering if you could just sort of chat about that.
The question on where do you want the exhibit to go? I mean, for me, I feel like art you should not have to pay for. So it was really important for me when I first had the space in Bed-Stuy Restoration Plaza. It was public, it was free, it was in the Black Bronx community. So we all need to see ourselves. So for me, you know, if you want to bring it to Japan, you want to bring it to New Orleans, it's history, it's American history, it's a Black perspective. We have to teach it. I mean, but also like for us, I mean, I've had captions where I'm like, what you don't see is the officer who is yelling down my throat or whatever, or I'll just, the footage shows it all. There's 200 of them, but there's a lot of other photographers that focus on that. I just don't. They do, but sometimes just like sometimes they're there in the image. They can't help it. Just like the Washington Square protest, you can't help. They're always in a photo. They're always there. So and that's the narrative. It's like the car is always still behind you. And then the text, or if you want to acknowledge it, but it's almost like you just can't escape them. You know, but there are other photographers who focus on that. I just can't.
And also, I've learned that people on Instagram don't read.
Not at all.
Yeah, they don't read at all. Prime example today, I posted something about, because as everyone should know, it's Eric Gardner was murdered today. Someone put happy birthday. And I had to private message, and it's somebody I actually really know. And I had to private message him like, it's not his birthday, it's the day he was murdered. And he was like, ouch. Yeah, ouch, dude. So I don't really focus on, social media, like Instagram is such a small platform. Yeah. As much as some people say it's a large platform, it's really, like, I don't enjoy my images on Instagram until I see them big. Like even on my laptop, I'm like, oh, now that looks even better than on my phone. Or like I recently just printed for myself some favorite of my own images. I'm like, oh my God, these look amazing. So I think it's bigger. Like I think this platform makes it more enjoyable or more rewarding that we have captured these images. Yeah.
I agree with that as well. Seeing it printed is awesome. And just seeing it shared with other people, available for other people to view, I think that's amazing. You know, it gets it out of your phone, also of your computer, also of your own social media page, and into the eyes of other people. And it also feels good to, one, see other people's work, to get outside of your own head. I think that was such the beautiful thing about being able to go to Capture the Movement. You know, not only was I excited to just see my photo like live and in color, but also to walk around and see what other people saw, you know, from the photo of the postal worker at the bottom far right, or to see Henry's photo, which is right above that at the very top row. I mean, or JR's photo right here with the woman with the bikini and the fro. I mean, it's amazing to see other people's work as well. So.
It'll be a great thing for my work, like, it'll be a great thing for my work to be shared, like, not only in America, but also around the world too as well. Like, I would like my work to be shared in London, Paris, Berlin, Spain, Tokyo, Russia, Toronto, Los Angeles, Miami.
That's right, Sam. Let's go. Sky's the limit.
Kyoto, South Africa. Anyways, though, like one of my whenever my works takes me, I would like to go because one of my goals as a photographer is like to travel around the world. So I would like to have my pictures shown around the world, so I could go to an exhibit and say, "Hey, I took that picture." Also, like what Amanda says, like I like to see what photographers their pictures because like I want to see what they shot from their perspective, from what their story, what they trying to sell, what they trying to see, what they see from their own eyes. So yeah.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thanks for taking photos.